What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be my brand new album review for a 2024 release. I know I did address that I have decided not to review new albums anymore, but I have decided to review this album and dedicate it to the bands themselves. Today I'm going to be reviewing the very anticipated, now released debut studio album from a band called Heriot, entitled Devoured by the Mouth of Hell. This is the album to be released for the very first time through one of my favourite record labels of Century Media Records, and I have talked about Heriot previously when I did review their third EP of 2022's Profound Morality. This album was produced by Jake, one of the band members, and Josh Middleton from Silosis. And this album was mixed by Will Putney from deathcore band Fit for an Autopsy. Now this is a band that I've been a fan of for more than a few years up to this point, and I could not have been extremely happier than this, because Heriot are, without any question that needed to be asked, one of the most hard-working, very productive bands out there in terms of seeing newer faces of metal bands that are incredibly rising a lot of the attention. They did support a lot of bands involving Architects, Slipknot, Lamb of God, Napalm Death. Heriot are a band, musically speaking, can be extremely hard to describe. They are one of those other newer bands that they have wanted to share their own art, and yes, it can be challenging for anybody to digest some metal music like this, but they did say that it was that plan to make music in their own style, and it was so intentional. That I really do appreciate so much for the band. It is nearly 34 minutes in length, and I will urge you guys to discover this album for yourselves if you want to hear something incredibly brutal, chaotic, and some of the most uncompromising pieces of metal originality. The first track on the album is Foul Void. Unsettling, howling guitar notes, and then to hear the drums and vocals to come in, then the filthy eruption of the tones begin. I'll have to say it, both the vocals from Debbie and Jake were phenomenal from this track to the very end of the album. They were both excellent. To hear these possessed demonic screams and gruesome, really sick vocals of growls. Destructive riffs and brilliant drums. I really like the change of sounds to hear the bass and the cleaner vocals to create the atmosphere while they continue the bleakness of the instrumentation. It's an absolutely awesome starting track that sounds just ferocious, intense, and pulverizing. Harm sequence. It's less than 2 minutes long, but it's filled to the brim of chugging riff goodness, engaging fast-paced energy. It delivers the madness of controlled drums, frantic whammy bar lead guitar solo work. It is brief of a song, but it's just savage. Opaline, I adored this track. The more I listened to it, it is to me one of the greatest tracks the band had ever created. I loved it right from the start, and it got better. The clean guitars with the reverb dig into some difference of intensity. Debbie's vocals were just beautiful and made the song stand right out. Mysterious, haunting, and its soundscape is so big. Creates some kind of doomy style with a combined melancholic vibe. It's one of the best tracks on the album. It's just perfection. Sage Lord, another monstrous song. It is incredibly vicious, violent, and full of unrelenting terror. The rhythm is memorable and the chorus is strong. The bass is huge. It's one of the simplistic ones in terms of riffs and music, but it still assaults the listener and grabs any listener by the throat. Sentenced to the Blade. Heavy, distorted start, and the double bass drums kick in to build a lot of the drive. Super tight verse sections, which made the song very precise. From the full destructive power, and the adrenaline was completely made. Destruction of the breakdown section, which added a lot of the punches and the kicks. Solvent Gaze. A darker, slow played form of instrumentation. It's got some mixture of industrial, continuing doom, and impending drones of distortion, and the vocals that can be heard from the background with the reverb. Sludge all the way through. It's got a well-made balance from the suspense, which is another big favourite for me on this album. Lashed. This is an interesting song because it is full of effects. Intriguing to hear the band go into a big form of progression of different influences, and it shows the band's uniqueness of experimentation. It goes into more of that ambience, spooky, and just as uncompromising. It's another really strong song to hear the beginning of where I think the band is going to go into to explore the sounds for some future material. At the Fortress Gate, returns back to the brutality. It's a versatile and unhinged song. The verse sections to the structure were perfect. It can be so addictive. The musicianship is one thing to point out here, especially on a track like this, because it's got a ton of great chemistry. All of these pieces of this track were full of chaotic elements. It's another one of the best songs on the album. Visage, the penultimate song, just a masterpiece. I adored this one, just like with Opaline. I think that track and this one are two of my favourite Heriot songs ever so far. It goes along so perfectly, gorgeous, from its gigantic ambient textures. Once again, a moody and brooding form of tonality. It's an outstanding song because of the performances and the musical ability of not only the sounds of metal, but to hear Heriot go into a very huge, adventurous direction. So I would definitely see this one as one of their strongest from their songwriting and the overall craft. The last track, Mourn, a maddening, dynamic, well-made finale. Unstoppable and combined through powerful, brutal sounds with effective riffs, and it shows the whole track's variety. What I really liked about this track is that as I was listening to the album heavily, as well as to hear the final sounds of this track, the produced sounds from the instruments were punishing, crushing, and striking. Wicked track that's once again massive on direction, and it presented the band's whole creative freedom right at the very end, just like at the start of the album. The production, as I said, done by Josh and Jake, is really, really good, and in my opinion, it is a growing improvement of production and mixing after what the band did go through from the previous releases, even ones before the Profound Morality EP. A phenomenal achievement of a record. The band should be very, very fucking proud of themselves. No rhyme or reason to say that I do love this album. I definitely recommend this album for anybody who wants to get into this style of music. And for those who have heard of this album, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. I'm going to give Devoured by the Mouth of Hell by Heriot a very high an enthusiastic 9 out of 10. The more I have been blasting this album through my speakers, it's just intriguing, fantastic, and it's not only a really versatile made album, but I am looking forward to hear and see what the band are going to do next after this album's era. Much love to the band, and I hope to see them in Birmingham in late November time, and I will always share my gratitude and support for one of my favourite bands of today. Thank you guys for watching, and I will keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.